Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Whoop Podcast. I'm your host, Will Ahmed, founder and CEO of Whoop. We're on a mission to unlock human performance. If you're thinking about joining Whoop, you can visit whoop.com, sign up for a free 30-day trial. That's a pretty good deal. On this week's episode, Whoop Global Head of Human Performance, the principal scientist, Kristen Holmes, is joined by Julie Menanno. The licensed marriage and family therapist specializes in emotionally focused therapy for couples. She's the author of the book Secure Love, which helps create lasting relationships. She also provides insight and advice for couples at The Secure Relationship on Instagram, which has over 1 million followers. Additionally, she founded and runs the Bozeman Therapy and Counseling Clinic and the Secure Relationship Coaching. Kristen and Julie discussed Julie's work as a couples therapist, the characteristics of a healthy relationship, the framework of emotionally focused therapy, EFT, attachment theory and the 4 attachment styles, what a secure relationship looks like, and takeaways from Julie's book, Secure Love. If you have a question to see answered on the podcast, email us podcastwhoop.com, call us 508-443-4952. Here are Kristen Holmes and Julie Menanno.
Julie, welcome to the Whoop Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah, so pumped to have this conversation. You have written a sensational book called Secure Love.
Thank you.
I have to admit that, I've only kind of read about attachment styles and kind of theory, and I'm very much a novice. So I'm so excited about this conversation to learn more. I think what's so cool, Julie, is that you have, just thousands and thousands of repetitions with clients, helping them understand how to communicate better, how to use this framework of attachment style to, build their language and their skills as couples. Maybe start, I loved in the introduction of your book where you had no desire to work with couples.
Yeah.
What was that moment where you were like, I want to work with couples? How did that happen?
I'm kind of, so the moment was I had to work with some couples to get my licensure because you have to, have experience with different populations to earn your hours after grad school to get the full license. And so I saw the first couple and I thought, well, this is really hard, and which is, I love hard. I love challenge. And so I realized there could be some potential here for doing some really cool psychotherapy, but in a way that's also it's almost like emotional. Like, I don't want to say this as a way to dismiss people's feelings because I absolutely honor people and their emotional experiences they bring to me. But it's almost like playing chess because you're having to be so strategic because one person in a room is very, very manageable to contain. But when you're trying to contain 2 people plus their relationship, it just felt like, wow, this could be really fun, fun work and very impactful work at the same time. And so I just immediately, if something's a challenge for me that I want to do, I don't waste time. I'll figure out how to go find a way to learn it. I got on the computer, found the first training for emotionally focused therapy for couples that I do. And it happened to be in Montana, and the first place in the country that they were doing it from that point that day. I think it was the following week or something. I could have just stayed in LA where I lived at the time and done it like a month later in Pasadena with Sue Johnson, who is the, guru of this work, but I couldn't wait. I had to go do it. So I went, and I have, I never took another client on after that as an individual. It was just all couples after that. And, what it really is for me is a couple things. One, it's just, the actual active strategic operating the session, it's just so active and fulfilling. And then the emotional part is just so beautiful, just seeing these people go through these bonding experiences and really getting to dive into someone's world that you really get to see in its rawest form in the context of, their relationship. And then the third and probably biggest piece is I'm leaving my clients with a bond in their real life. That feels very, very important to me, that we're not doing this work. And I am a huge fan of all types of therapy, including individual therapy. But for me, it feels just extra fulfilling to be able to send them out into the real world with the work that we're doing in the room.
I love that. One of the things you talk about in the book that I think is really interesting is sometimes this whole notion of therapy can be, really triggering in and of itself.
Yeah.
How do you think about that, right? As someone
Mhm.
who's, kind of just in
Mhm.
the spirit of starting at the beginning, if a couple or an individual wants to make improvements in their
Mhm.
relationship, let's say, and I think oftentimes we think, I'm the problem, or I need to fix myself, and
Sure.
there's to your point, there is a place, of course, for individual therapy, but it seems that coming to a session, with your partner to be able to be in the same room together seems like a more efficient path in some
Mhm.
ways. But how do you know when to kind of come at the therapy as a couple versus an
Mhm.
individual?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I would probably, if someone is in a relationship and they have access to really high quality couples work, I would recommend that they go that route, because high quality couples work is every bit as much individual work as it
Mm,
is couples work. There's some nuance to that. I mean, if someone comes to me and they're, really struggling with like a substance abuse issue or serious depression, or just a really hard time with self-regulation, like so hard that they're actually not able to really participate in the couple's work, which is, it doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. Then that person really they do need to go get some individual work, because they can't fully participate in the couple's work if they're not in, a wise mind,
mm,
regulated mind window
mhm,
of tolerance. For the most part, nobody's ever completely in their window of tolerance in couples work. That's part of the work, is getting the couples, able to co-regulate each other into that place. But so I think that, for most people, good couples work, given that it is quality and the couples therapist knows what they're doing, it is probably more effective, because your stuff is alive. It's
mm,
much harder to bring things to life when you're not in the moment of the trigger. So, couples are triggering each other left and right in the
mm,
sessions. They start talking about an issue. And so I'm just diving into those triggers and working with them real time. And the most, usually for most people, the most painful stuff that they have to bring to the table is their relationship stuff to begin with.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So let's say, and you mentioned this in the book, and I think oftentimes, you go to couples therapy, then folks get divorced, right? Like
mhm.
like couples therapy doesn't
Yeah,
seem to end very well for couples in that they
very
don't stay
true.
together.
Yes.
So, and the data around that is kind of interesting. So, how do you how do you answer that? Is the goal to keep folks together? Is the goal to how do you
Mhm.
think about compatibility versus like just
Mhm.
communication issues? It's like it's obviously there's a lot to unpack there, but
Yeah.
yeah, just curious, like at the start, like how do you frame it in a way that's optimistic, you know?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'm really clear. First of all, the couples therapy historically does have a very bad track record.
Mm,
I remember in 2000-ish, early 2000s, reading an article about how couples therapy statistically leads to more divorce. And I think that there's something to be said for differentiating couples therapy from really high quality couples therapy. I mean, couples therapy is a very tricky subject, because poor couples therapy is only going to make things worse, because the poor couples therapy is only going to be reinforcing the problem in the room,
mm,
right? And so we do have to be very careful with that. But let's say, in the field gets very, very, we keep growing, we keep learning new things about relationships and neuroscience and attachment and somatic work, and we're really improving the quality of the work, right? So let's say now we get the work to the highest quality possible for any, given all the limitations of, that to begin with. But my job is never to keep a couple together, ever. I mean, I can want that with them if that's what they're wanting, but my goal is to create a healthy relationship. And from that place of a healthy relationship, they together, and with me helping them facilitate the conversation, would make that choice as to how to go forward. What I have found is that the vast majority of couples, when they do get to a healthy place, they just want to stay together. I mean, we've
mm,
created the environment that lends itself to, them wanting to keep going forward with each other. They feel close, they feel connected, they're working through their problems better. But it certainly, it can't be the goal. If that's the goal, then that really kind of starts to, cloud the actual work, which is, the agenda really has to be to create health and not
yeah.
longevity. Yeah, so I'm really clear with people
Mm.
about that. And I also am very, very interested in someone's resistance to the work. I mean, that's the work.
Mm.
The resistance to the work is the work. So if someone comes into me and they're like, "I don't want to be here. I don't trust couples therapy." I mean, I'm just going to meet them right where they are and dive into that. Help me understand. I'm going to validate that, it makes a lot of sense to me. You have seen multiple people in your life go through couples therapy and ended up divorcing a year later. Like, of course you don't trust that process. Right? I mean, I would like to believe that we can have a different experience in here, but, first of all, I just want to honor your resistance and, wouldn't it be nice if we could get you guys to a healthier place? But if you don't feel like that's happening, if I don't feel like that's happening in 4 or 5 sessions, I'm not, we're not seeing any changes taking place outside of here, then I don't think it's a good idea to move forward, but why not give it a try?
What would be the characteristics of a relationship that would warrant going to couples therapy? What you
Mhm.
say this word, a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
What does that actually look like?
It looks like really 2 things. One is, really having a good solid emotional bond, being able to be
Mm.
open and vulnerable with each other, being able to have positive experiences together, whether that's, physically, sexually, physically affectionate, verbal,
Mhm.
intellectual. People have all different ways that they like to feel connected to other people. And then on the second piece would be being able to navigate a life together. I mean, just all the logistics of running a life together,
Mm.
finances, home, parenting, all of these just decisions that couples have to make. Are they able to make decisions in a way that, for the most part, over the big picture, mutually fulfilling for each of them, and in a way that doesn't erode their emotional connection? And as we strengthen the emotional connection, it does make it easier for partners to collaborate and communicate with each other. And the smoother their collaborations and communications go, the closer they feel. Now, you asked an important question, like, how do you know when it's an incompatibility issue? And the only way to answer that question is to first clean up the communication. It
Mm.
could be that when we get a couple to a place where they're really communicating in a healthy way, they say, "Hey, yeah, we're really great at talking about it, but the truth is that, I want a family and you don't, or
Mm.
we just really see finances so differently, or there's just too many areas where things don't line up, and it is
Mm.
probably better to go forward with other, future relationships where maybe there isn't so much stress on the table because of the differences between the two of us." But again, most of the time what I find is if people have already come together, they have enough compatibility there, that if we can clean up the communication, it does tend to work out, but not always. I mean, there are,
Yeah.
I want to say probably, I would say 80% of the couples I work with end up staying
Mm.
together, maybe more than that.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a good track record, Julie.
Well, it is a good track record, and I'll tell you what, when I first started this work, I mean, I was new and I was struggling, and it takes a while to learn how to be a good couples therapist, and I
Mm.
didn't have that success rate, and I do now, and, my couples didn't change, I changed. I just keep growing and getting better, and I think that, anyone out there who wants to be a couples therapist, it is really hard work, but it is
Yeah.
really possible to just keep growing and getting better at it and seeing more and more success.
Yeah. I mean,
Mm.
there's lots of different, I suppose, psychotherapeutic couples techniques,
Mhm.
but you have chosen a specific one, and
Mhm.
that has obviously led to, you know, huge amounts of success in terms of
Yeah.
your ability to help couples come back together and solidify their communication and get on a path of growth together, and all of
Mhm.
these beautiful things that you're helping to facilitate across these sessions. Talk a little bit about your framework and why you chose
Sure.
it.
Okay, so I do emotionally focused therapy for couples, and, we work with attachment theory. We use the principles of attachment theory to create, an emotional connection as kind of the foundation of the work. We work very emotionally. We're getting people out of talking about situations from a really intellectual place and into processing their feelings and sharing their feelings in the service of creating more understanding, more empathy, in the service of basically creating change. We want
Hmm.
to create communication change, and we want to create behavior change. Our way of going about that is to do the emotional work to get there. It's a very structured type of therapy. The earliest stages are getting, what happens is that when, from an attachment theory perspective, when couples start to talk about a topic, whatever it is, the dishes or, parenting or wedding planning, whatever,
The
um,
problem's not the
the
problem.
problem's not the problem. What happens
I
is
just heard you say that in the book a
yes,
lot.
yes, what the problem is they're not communicating in a safe way. And so now they're unmeeting each other's attachment needs for,
Mm,
to feel valuable, to feel validated, to feel like my needs matter to you. And that's really the core issue when the couples fight. And so I go in and I need to first just stabilize this. Like, we got to get
mm,
you out of these blaming, protesting, stonewalling. We got to get you out of those behaviors by understanding more about why you're needing to do these behaviors.
mm,
People really need to understand. You can say to anyone, "Don't do that anymore," right? And that's going to have limited effectiveness. Most people probably know what they shouldn't, quote unquote, shouldn't be doing. And so I'm really trying to figure out, like, why are you doing this? What's going on here? Why are you needing to protest? Are you not feeling heard? Whatever. That starts to stabilize things. And then once they're able to communicate in a safer way, then we go into really a much deeper level of work where we start doing childhood work. We start doing negative self belief work. We start
mm,
doing really intense bonding work in a way that's facilitating their ability to help each other heal. Instead of me trying to heal them, instead of them trying to heal on their own, which is
mm,
all important too, I'm now facilitating healing between the two of them so that in moments when these negative self beliefs start to contaminate the way they're communicating, they can come in and co regulate each other around those things. And
mm,
so kind of in a way, kind of undoing childhood wounds with each other using the relationship. And then, yeah, so in the scaffold of EFT, I can use anything I want. I can use cognitive behavioral work. I can use
mhm,
psychodynamic work. I can use somatic work. It incorporates anything. So to me, it's not, I don't find EFT at all limiting, but I
mm,
also find it very containing and that there's a very clear structure to it. So I
yeah.
know what I'm always knowing where I am in the therapy, where I am in the session, so I just love EFT. I don't know what my professional or personal life would be like without the
Mm.
EFT concepts that I use.
It's cool that you've been able to, in your work, just to be able to validate that framework, and
Yeah,
it's amazing.
it is. It's a
So
beautiful framework.
let's define the different attachment styles.
Sure.
And I just want to caveat this a little bit, or I want to get your thoughts. I'm a scientist. I
Yep.
communicate science. So I certainly don't have a platform that you do, but and folks need to follow your work on Instagram because it's truly it's
Well, thank you.
unbelievable. But I think there can be, I worry sometimes,
Mhm.
especially in the area of psychology, that sometimes on Instagram there's obviously a loss, and TikTok it's even kind of
Yeah,
potentially more damaging. There isn't the context, right? So I
sure.
worry about people diagnosing their partner or
Yeah,
diagnosing someone they haven't even met, that, "Hey,
yeah,
this is an attachment style." Like, I feel like there are some dangers in creating what I think are some of these, very narrow, limiting,
yeah,
potentially, boxes that we kind of put people in, right?
absolutely. Yep.
And I think that it can color how we see them potentially, right? And
Mhm.
it kind of, so I guess I before we kind of get into define these attachment styles, I would love for you to just educate us and
Mhm.
the listeners on how do we think about the stuff that's on Instagram, and
Mhm.
how do we think about attachment styles broadly as a way to understand someone, but not
Box
necessarily
them
box them
in.
in.
Yep,
Yeah.
totally. I mean, there's no I don't think there's a super easy answer to that question. I mean, the way
Mm,
that I approach it is like, look, I really believe that labels can be useful until they're not, right? And I really believe that giving people the ability to see their relationship through the lens of these styles and attachment theory is more beneficial than not, right? But more beneficial than not still leaves a lot of room for people to misuse these labels. And, so I try hard to balance it out with like, look, try not to box yourself in, and let's not use this as pathologizing information. Let's use this information
Mm.
as a tool to have a guide as to what to work on, right? That's really the usefulness. It's helping you understand yourself better so that you are better informed about what you can work on. It's just like if you, go and, I don't know, you're studying a new language or something and you get information about where your specific challenges are, then you have a better idea of where to put your energy into working, and that's going to help you move faster. So, if you're using these labels to either, pathologize someone else or blame someone else, or then you're only acting out your own problem, right?
Mm.
And so, anyway, I've just had to sort of reconcile that. Like, I'm trying to help people. This lens
Mhm.
helps them. I'm going to go ahead and say, look, we have the categories for a reason. I mean, most people do tend to associate themselves with one. But
Mm.
if you don't, that's okay. I think what's really important is recognizing, hey, I have relationship problems. And that means that I probably have some degree of an insecure attachment. Who cares what the category is? Like, don't worry about the label. Just work
Mm.
on what's showing up. Why am I needing to protest, right? Why am I needing to shut down when I feel triggered? What's going on with that? And we can still look at all of that through the lens of attachment without putting someone in a box. And I mean, one of the things I've worked incredibly hard on with my account is just really trying to bring a lot of compassion and empathy to these labels
Mm.
and not have people use them as a way to beat themselves up. And, I've had a lot of problems with especially avoidant attachment because, some of the material that I think was being put out initially when attachment theory kind of jumped from the
Mm.
clinical world to the general population is that avoidance are the problem there, and I've really tried to work to undo that because in my work, avoidance are not the problem. They're 50% of the problem, but it's all,
Mhm.
so I hope that answers your question. That
Yeah,
again, I
that's
don't think there's a
perfect.
super easy answer to it, but
Yeah. Okay, so we wanna be secure in our relationships. Why don't you go through just what the 4 different attachment styles
sure.
that you use in your practice?
Okay, so the basis of attachment theory is that we are wired to have relationship needs for safety and closeness because it's part of our evolutionary human need to survive as a species is we need each other. So to need each other, we need to feel close and safe with each other. And then the flip side of that coin is that we have relationship fears because the fears kind of motivate us to make sure that our relationships are intact and our needs are met. And if you have people who grow up in kind of emotionally dysfunctional environments where their attachment needs aren't fully being met, you're going to have people who have developed strategies to deal with that. If we don't have healthy outlets for our emotions, then we're going to develop unhealthy ways to manage those emotions. And so when I say emotions, I'm specifically talking about relationship fears when it comes to, romantic relationships. And so your attachment style for most people is defined by the nature of the fears you experience in relationships and how you manage those fears in relationships. So someone with a more anxious attachment, they're going to be really sensitive to abandonment, which is emotional abandonment or physical abandonment. That's their sensitivity, that's their wound. And so the way that they typically go about managing moments when that fear gets triggered is close the distance, frantically seek safety, change what's outside of them so that they can feel safe inside of them. All beautiful intentions. We of course want people to find a way to regain a sense of safety around their relationships, but it gets a little wonky. A lot of
Mhm.
times they're trying to create safety in ways that are they're putting temporary safety with their partner over their overall well-being, or the way that they're trying to reach for that connection back and reach to motivate change is actually pushing people away from them. And so that's their work is kind of learning to better communicate their needs and more effectively get their needs met, basically. And
Yeah.
that's a broad thing to say, but someone with an avoidant attachment, the way they've learned to manage relationship fear is just not be consciously aware of the fear at all. Just cut it away, try to distract from it, try to kind of indirectly get your needs met by being an achiever or fixing problems. And so, a lot of times too, when there's any kind of relationship stress with a partner, they're going to deal with that. Their way of regulating is just get away, get out of it, shut it down, move away
Mhm.
from it, distract. And so their work is to learn to stay emotionally engaged in a
And
safe way.
can you give an example of like how that would actually show up, like in a
Sure.
practical kind of day-to-day setting?
Yeah, the anxious partner feels alone because they don't have a strong emotional connection with their avoidant partner, and they play a role in that, right?
Mhm.
But they're not feeling connected, and they don't have real true intimacy, because if you have these types of insecure attachment, your ability to experience real intimacy is already compromised. So the anxious partner is sitting there feeling that loneliness, right? So now they're trying to make sense of it in all these ways. And let's say they make sense of it as their partner just doesn't want to spend time with them, right? They have all these good reasons to believe that. And so now they go in with heated protest. You never want to spend time with me. And now we have this avoidant partner who is now over here going, well, that doesn't feel fair. I do want to spend time with them, so then they now feel triggered, like, oh no, I'm failing them. I'm getting it wrong. And so what do? Then they get really rational and they start giving, well, we took a walk last week together, and they start kind of missing the whole emotional meaning of the message. And then now the anxious partner, who was actually trying to communicate emotions, but not in a very effective way, starts to feel invalidated for the emotions they weren't putting words to begin with. And then they now get heated and they start protesting more. And the more they protest, the more overwhelmed the avoidant partner, who's used to fixing the problem. They're now not being able to fix the problem. They get overwhelmed. Their strategy is just shut down. So they've had this, fight that's probably the same fight they've had over and over again, regardless of the topic. And they end up in this kind of tense place. Then they miss
Mm.
each other. They get to a point where we don't like how we feel when we're not the connection that we do have. And so they make their way back. They don't know how to really fully repair. In the process of arguing about this already unmet need for more
Mm.
closeness, they have now left each other feeling attacked, misunderstood, invalidated, unheard. And that just kind of keeps putting dents in the car, and eventually
Yeah.
the car, it goes from, perfectly normal at the beginning of the relationship to all dented up. And
Mm.
nobody really understands how we got there, because, one dent, it's just like one little thing at a time, and it all builds up. So,
So how do you break that pattern? Obviously, it's
mhm.
not in one session clearly, but
No, no, no.
it's you kinda
No.
have to rewire your thinking, I would imagine, and you have to create new language, new
Mhm.
understanding, new awareness.
So first I
Yeah.
have to just help them be aware of the cycle. Like, this is what's going
Mm.
wrong. Here's your moves. Here's why you're not reaching each other. Here's your part. Here's your part. And let's now understand better what you're trying to do here. Like, you're not trying to leave your partner feeling attacked and like they're failing you, right? You're trying to for connection. Your body is giving you some really important messages here, that this doesn't feel right. This isn't working for me. And you're not trying to abandon your partner and leave them feeling alone and not respond to them. What you're trying to do is, stay safe from your feelings of frustration for not being able to calm them down, or, your frustrations of not knowing what emotional connection is to begin with. How are you supposed to give something that you don't even have in yourself? And then, as they start to understand themselves and each other, we start giving them more tools. Let's communicate all this stuff. It's all the same stuff. Let's just communicate it in a way that brings you together instead of tearing you apart. And what are they doing while they're doing this communication? Connecting, right?
Mm.
So now in the session, they're getting the answer to the problem. They're getting the solution and they're experiencing the solution. So they're getting some skills, plus they're experiencing the solution. So now they start to go outside of the therapy, and gradually it just starts to stick, where they're able to recreate these experiences. And if they're not able to recreate them in the session, which is a really good thing, because then I get to see what the blocks are and I get to work through the blocks and get them talking more about the blocks. And then as we go into the second phase, we do what's called a pursuer softening, which is to get that anxious partner softened. We need you to start delivering your messages in a way that's going to pull your partner in, create invitations instead of accusations. And we need to get you, like soften your approach. And then the other piece of it is called a withdrawer re-engagement, where we're getting the withdrawer more engaged, able to be more emotionally engaged with self and with the partner. So
Do anxious types attract anxious types,
no,
or does it really vary? Yeah.
it's
Okay.
I would say this is a pretty extreme statistic, but 99% of the couples I treat are in an anxious avoidant dynamic.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a balancing act. I mean, emotional systems are going to find balance. It's not a healthy balance, but
Right.
it's better than no
But you're
balance.
seeking you end up being attracted to someone who has what you don't have.
Basically, yeah. Like people who are anxious and they're constantly kind of overwhelmed with their emotions, and
Mm,
they're constantly feeling kind of, some to varying degrees. Some people are more distressed than others, but dysregulated. Like, yeah, they sign me up for the guy who is, super stable,
mm,
is doesn't react, and that's great until it's not. And there's
right.
always strengths to that. I mean, I never want to take away from what's working, because some things really do work between two people who also have this distress. But then if you have this, person, 75% of those with avoidant attachment are male, and 75% of those with anxious attachment are female. So if you take this person with an avoidant attachment, they don't have connections to their emotions, right? They don't have that rich emotional world. So for them, the anxious partner who's very emotionally expressive, it can feel good. It can kind of be a
Mm,
vicarious way for them to experience emotions. And then at the beginning of the relationship, they might feel very successful because the anxious partner is really into them or whatever, right? Until things start to go south. And so they thrive on feeling successful. So they're getting all these messages, you're successful. And
mhm,
then when they're thriving, they're, trying to be more successful. And the anxious partner's over here going, wow, I'm getting all this attention. And then as things start to progress and go south, everybody starts moving into kind of the dark sides of those places, then it's not working anymore. And then we have to come in and figure out how to make them both secure, because what we really want is for both people to be emotionally engaged and
mm,
regulated at the same time. That window of tolerance, that's where we want the balance to come from. Each
mhm.
person is balanced instead of having to balance each other out.
And that's a secure
That's
attachment,
secure. Yeah.
obviously. Great. Okay.
Yeah.
And I want to come back to this notion of co-regulation, and I want you to unpack that for us. But maybe disorganized, just talk a little
Mhm.
bit about what that style is.
Disorganized, very difficult to describe. So I kind of like to paint this picture like you take a blender, you pour in some anxious, you pour in some avoidant, you sprinkle
Mm.
on some trauma, you blend it up, you take a glass and you pour it all over the counter or maybe in the glass, right? It's so hard to describe because it's very unpredictable. So one person's disorganized attachment can show up very differently from another person's disorganized attachment, which can show up very differently from the way their disorganized attachment showed up 2 days earlier. So
Mhm.
that's really it. Disorganized. You don't know what you're going to get. People with an anxious attachment, a very clear anxious attachment, they're going to behave predictably. When they get triggered, they're going to seek closeness. Their bag of tricks is pretty predictable, right? Someone with an avoidant attachment, when they get triggered, they're pretty predictable. Someone with a disorganized attachment, you just don't know what you're going to get.
Mm.
And really at the end of the day, I mean, it's a very painful way to live. A lot of emotional dysregulation, a lot of dissociation, trauma symptoms, and
Mm.
and yeah, so I have some articles on Psychology Today that really dive into disorganized attachment for anyone who's interested in learning about it more.
So how does that disorganized attachment show up in a relationship? What would that look
Mhm.
like? Or is it just so variable that it really is just all over the place?
Well, yeah, the predictability is the unpredictability, but the core fear of someone with a disorganized attachment isn't just it's more than just abandonment or failing. It's like fear of people. People are really out to get me. People really aren't safe, right? Like what happens is if
Mm,
your caregiver is the source of love and the source of danger, I mean, that's going to really disorganize a child's attachment system.
mm,
It's called the approach retreat distress. You know,
mhm,
they want to approach, but then they're scared to approach because they don't know what they're going to get. And so there's just constant, like, the fear of threat, the sense of
mhm,
threat is very high a lot of the time. So their partner, can't kind of has to walk on eggshells. Anything their partner does or says can send them to a really scary place where they get terrified. My partner now is dangerous. And then that leaves them feeling so much emotional chaos. And then from there, anything might happen. It might, sometimes someone might just kind of go blank and dissociate and really escape their body, because it's too much, or especially if they have trauma in their history that has kind of lent itself to dissociation as a coping strategy, or they might, freak out and yell and scream and break things, or just, drive away, or, turn to substances. It's just a lot of, like, much more intensity in the coping mechanisms, much more intensity in the reactions and the fears. But then sometimes they're in a good mood and they might not react at all,
yeah.
So it's a mixed bag.
What's up, folks? If you are enjoying this podcast or if you care about health, performance, fitness, you may really enjoy getting a Whoop. That's right. You can check out Whoop at whoop.com. It measures everything around sleep, recovery, strain, and you can now sign up for free for 30 days. So you'll literally get the high performance wearable in the mail for free. You get to try it for 30 days, see whether you want to be a member. And that is just at whoop.com. Back to the guests.
What would you say are the goal, of course, is to get the couple in a secure place,
Mhm,
secure love. I guess I'm wondering, like, what does that language of security
mhm,
look like
mhm.
across a day?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I think that'd be really interesting for again, I think a lot of this is like, can I identify secure love in my own life,
Mhm.
and what does that actually look like? And I think just giving,
Yeah.
of course your book outlines this so beautifully. So I really
Thank you.
encourage people to read this because I think it's just a great way to understand yourself and be able to understand a partner and come to your earlier point, come to a relationship with more empathy and compassion.
Sure.
But yeah, just wonder, like, what does this, like, secure love actually look like in practice, in a home environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really the quality of responsiveness partners, the
Oh, I
quality
love
of their
that. Yeah.
their responsiveness, especially to distress. I mean, there's kind of this hovering background of kindness and validation and, wanting to work together and be flexible and open to each other's perspectives. And that's kind of all, basic, kind of relationship advice that everybody kind of probably intuitively already knows. But then there's this other piece, which is really how we are going to define secure attachment, which is, what do you do when you're triggered, right? And you might be triggered from your partner reaching for connection, or you might be, in a moment that whatever. But I'll give an kind of an example here. Like, let's say that, your partner, you have children together and your partner snaps at your kid, right? And says, kind of reacts to your child's annoying behavior in a way that you feel is too harsh, right? What do you do with that right there? There's an opportunity to practice secure attachment.
Mm.
So if you want to create an insecure attachment with your partner, then you want to jump in and go, don't talk to her like that. That's not right, or why are you so mean, or criticize them. that is going to really leave them alone now with their distress over the issue to begin with, and it's also going to leave them feeling misunderstood and attacked and invalidated, and they could clearly be in the wrong, right? It's not about necessarily right or wrong when we first start dealing with it. A better way to approach that situation, if you're wanting to foster a secure attachment, is, hey, listen, I know that you're really trying to communicate what it doesn't feel right for you to her. I really get that, and I get annoyed too when, she's not cooperating, and it's hard.
Mhm.
It's really hard, and I understand that. And I know, and I appreciate that you're wanting to motivate her growth and, do all these things that all good parents want to do. But at the
Mhm.
same time, we both have had experiences in our past where we haven't been kind of treated in the right way around these kinds of things, and I just want to make sure that we're doing it differently for our kids. And so
Mhm.
that's the kind of conversation. I mean,
Yeah, so very validating and very,
exactly.
and just not defensive and
Yeah, not
yeah.
attacking. And now
Yeah.
you're also helping, partners need to help each other. Like, I mean, yeah, we're adults and we need to really be on top of how we speak to our kids, but
Mm.
isn't it great? Wouldn't it be great to have a partner who can also be there for you and understand more about what was distressing for you over the incident to begin with? Maybe there was something scary when you see your kid being rude or disrespectful. Your body goes, "Oh my God, they're going to have a bad life because they won't be able to get along with people." Isn't it nice to have someone to talk to about those feelings
Mhm.
instead of just being told, "You're wrong, you're wrong?" So
Right.
just now take that example and extrapolate it to lots of different little things where areas where things can go wrong. And that's just one little example too. So,
Yeah, that's perfect. So what proportion of the population is secure attachment? Do you have a
um,
sense? Just
no, there's a
roughly.
study. I mean, the study is kind of old, and it was 50%. I think it's probably lower now.
Okay.
I think now it's probably, I don't know. We're kind of in a weird phase because it's like things got really bad. And then all of a sudden social media came along, and for all
People
its
are more
faults,
aware.
exactly, it's giving people better skills. So I would
Mhm.
like to think that the self-help availability now is kind of moving things in a better trend.
Yeah, I think too, like I think there's less stigma around men, seeking
Oh,
help and
so true. Yeah,
I mean, I feel like that it's changing everything
it
in
really
a
is.
really
Yeah.
positive direction. So I guess my question is, given that half of the population, probably is not doesn't have the secure attachment kind of foundation, they're
Yeah.
entering in relationships with this avoidant, insecure
Yeah.
anxiety. Early in a relationship, everything is awesome,
Mhm.
it's going great. What are the flags? And
Mhm.
and is that even how we should be looking at it? Because I guess, part of me is like, I feel like every couple should
Mhm.
have experience couples therapy, right?
Oh,
To
yeah.
just again, it's not things might not be broken, but why aren't we optimizing,
I
right?
don't
Like,
I don't
let's
know. Yeah.
right? Like, why aren't we just staying ahead of this thing, right? Where we know that we're gonna
Yeah.
enter into these patterns just that are embedded, from our childhood, and they're going to rear their head when things get stressed,
It's
when
so
money is tight,
true. Yeah.
when, whatever the thing is, right? We become new parents, right? And we're tired as heck.
Mhm.
And so I suppose early in a relationship, to what degree should we be paying attention to these
Mhm.
different styles? And what's your feeling on that?
Well, first of all, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that I have told my kids very clearly, they're 23 down to 13, like, I don't care what you do, get 5 sessions of couples therapy when you decide to be in a serious relationship that you want a future with this person. I don't wanna go to the extreme of, when you're dating, although I'm a fan of that. Why not prevent negative cycles? But,
Mhm.
if you're gonna be committed, 5 sessions, because that can help you stabilize the way you fight, stabilize the way you deal with conflict and disagreement, and
Mm.
help you prevent these negative cycles. Negative cycles take relationships down. And, if you wait for 10 years of negative cycles, you're going to need a lot of therapy to stabilize all of that. There's a lot of mistrust built, there's a lot of unresolved wounds built, there's just more work to do. So that you're talking about the difference between a few months or even in really bad situations, year plus, 2 years plus compared to 5 sessions. And so really, if I'm going to kind of say two things to pay attention to at the beginning is one, when you're interacting with that person, what's happening in your body, right? Are you from day one? Are you feeling hurt? Are you feeling validated? Is your body kind of tensing up? Are there anxiety
Mm,
feelings creeping in? Are you having an urge to kind of shut down? I don't know what's going on with that, but you need to pay attention to any amount of discomfort, because that discomfort, there's wisdom in that. It's saying
mm,
something. I don't know again what it is, but people are so used to just, oh, they look good on paper, override their actual experiences, live
right.
experiences with the person and moments. Relationships are just a series of moments. If those
Mhm.
moments aren't high quality at the beginning, then something's going on, no matter
Yeah.
how great they are on paper.
Mhm.
And then the second thing, go ahead.
I think just to stay on that first point though,
Yeah.
I think folks I think modernity is set up in a way to almost give us license to ignore what's
Mhm.
happening internally. Like we kind of
So true.
can ignore signals, right? And
Yep.
just like brush it off,
Yep.
and but I think to your point, like it's so beautifully said, like there is so much wisdom, right? In
Mhm.
how we're responding and reacting, right? Like, does our heart rate go up? Does it go
Yes.
down? Like, do
Yes.
we, and that's really at the core of safety, right? Like, physiologically,
Absolutely. Yep.
there are very specific things happening
Yep.
physiologically when we feel safe versus when we don't. And, of course,
It's
we
so
monitor
true.
physiology.
Yeah.
So I see this manifest in the data, and in my own data.
Mhm.
When I feel safe and loved
Mhm.
and, secure, like I have higher heart rate variability, I have lower resting heart
Totally.
rate, I have
Yep.
more capacity, I sleep better. Like my life is
Yep.
good, and when it's the opposite, when I'm struggling in a relationship or, I don't feel safe and I don't feel secure, sure enough, like my heart rate variability is low. Like
Yep.
so I think that there is a lot of wisdom in terms of paying attention to those signals and I
I
wanted to
think that,
double tap
yeah, I
on that.
mean,
Yeah.
and that's really what I do. All of the work that I do with couples culminates into the felt sense. And I'm
Mm,
really bringing that to life. At the end of the session, I'm like, we need to really pay attention to the sense of ease in your body right now. And
mm,
because we need to know what our goal is here. And you guys did it. You did it, the work to get co-regulated with each other. But so I don't lose this point. I'm just going to go back a bit.
yeah.
Really what people need to be paying attention to, in addition to that felt sense, is
Mhm.
what the first fight, the conflict. Nothing is real until the conflict arises. Nothing. There's no reason to mistrust. There's no reason to show our worst selves, right? Until the conflict arises. That's when you're really going to see the relative health or lack of a relationship.
Ah, so perfect. I
Yeah.
In your book too, I mean, you talk about felt sense, you say that a
Mhm.
lot, and it's like such a empowering
Yeah.
way of like framing it, and connecting with the body. So it's beautiful. And I just wanted to spend, I know we're coming up on time, but I think just real quick, like how did you decide on the organization of the book? Because I
Mhm.
found that it's really good
Oh,
in
thank you.
terms of just teaching
Yeah.
and and being very practical. So just maybe real
Yeah.
quick, just how did you what was your vision for how you wanted people to read this and learn from it?
I 100% just followed the structure of the work I do in session.
Right.
That's it. I mean, I need to know the foundational information of
Mhm.
attachment theory, what I'm working with here. Then I need to get in there and talk about these negative cycles, stabilize them. Now we need to talk about how to prevent them. We need to talk about how to repair them. If there's old wounds that a couple is struggling with, I can't really help them fully heal from that until they're not communicating about the wounds in a negative cycle. We don't have to ignore it, but we don't
Mhm.
expect healing to happen until they're being, healthy communication. So it just kind of really logically followed the work I do with couples.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
So thank you to Sue Johnson for creating that structure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's the I guess the originator of EFTC, right?
Yes, and I
Yeah.
honestly think that she is the most brilliant. Well, she passed away recently, but
Oh, I'm
I know
sorry.
it was really
It's so hard when you're, like,
sad. I know.
mentored, you know,
You
yeah.
know, I feel so grateful because I got, just before she passed away, I did get her endorsement on my book, and that felt really good,
So
to
validating.
get that. Yeah, it was like, wow, that's really special. But yeah, I mean, she took attachment theory from a concept to something to do, to a guide, to a map, to a set of
Mm.
instructions. And to me, that's where absolute brilliance lies, as being able to turn a concept into, something very tangible and workable. So I just can't thank her enough for the gifts she gave to the world.
I have one
Mm.
final question. I'd love to know your thoughts on vulnerability
Mhm.
and, how important is that in a relationship? And if vulnerability isn't one of the more important kind of or ways to understand, like, I think if you can be vulnerable in a
Mhm.
relationship, like, that means that there's probably, like, a really high degree of security and health.
Mhm.
Like, I guess, is there a litmus test for, "Hey, yeah, this is a secure attachment,
Mhm.
overall, healthy relationship?" Like, what is that feature, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, people who don't have a secure attachment, I mean, they really, like, can't be vulnerable. The
Right.
reason that they have the insecure attachment is, you know, it's a communication is such a big piece of that, how they were communicated to, the types of, relationships they find themselves in, and the quality of their partners they hook up with, their communication, and then their own communication. So, I mean, really, vulnerability is just about really being able to understand and dive in and share your emotional experiences. I don't think that that's really fully possible without having body awareness.
Mm,
If we don't have without the body awareness, we're just talking about concepts of feelings. We're talking about our feelings from outside of ourselves, and like real engagement is having that feeling be alive and being able to put regulated words to it. I don't mean robotic words, but this pressure in my body, I do feel, a lot of fear right now. When you
yeah.
bring up concerns to me, I want to be able to be there for you, and I want to be able to take that in. But this pressure rises up in me, that's this fear that if you see me as getting it wrong, you're going to go away. I mean, that
Mm,
is the first step toward being able to stay with someone's concerns, which is just being able to put words to your emotional block. Right?
yeah.
It's easier to
Yeah.
work through that and say, have your partner say, "Okay, I hear what you're saying. Let's just kind of hold each other." And, because when I do bring up concerns, that's not what's going to happen. I'm not going to go away. So it's just that is a very different type of conversation than your partner bringing up a concern to you, the fear welling up in your body, you overriding it, not having any idea that it's there, and then just kind of shutting down or getting defensive. I mean, game changer. And one is showing up with vulnerability and one is not, but the
Yeah.
emotions are the same.
I love that. Well,
Yeah.
I
Mm.
could have so many more questions,
Yeah.
but I know we're at time. I hope people, check out Secure Love. It's just such a beautiful book,
Well, I really
and I think
appreciate
really
that.
empowering
Yeah,
information. So, where would be the best place for folks to find you? Like, where do you like
sure.
folks to go?
Well, so I have a website called thesecurerelationship.com, but then
Mm.
my Instagram is kind of my hub. That's where I put a ton of information on Instagram, which is at the secure relationship. And then Secure Love is available. The book is available wherever books are sold. I have my podcast
Mm.
starting Monday, which is 20 sessions of EFT therapy with a real couple,
Congratulations.
confidential
That is
for
just
them.
gonna be so fascinating.
This feels like everything that I stand for and believe for and was born for coming to a head is this
Oh,
podcast. So I'm so excited. I
I
really
love
think
it.
it's going to be tremendously helpful for people to see this work come alive. So,
Well, thank you for all the
yeah.
work that you've done and all the education that you do, online and in your book, and obviously the work that you're doing with couples. You're making the world a better, safer, more
Yeah.
secure place.
Well,
So
thank you. I
thank you.
really appreciate that. And likewise.
Yeah. Appreciate your time today. Thank
Okay.
you, Julie.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you to Julie Menanno for sharing her insight on relationships and attachment theory. If you want to learn more, go check out Julie's book, Secure Love. And if you're in the U.S. celebrating 4th of July this week, be safe and have a great holiday. Happy birthday, America. If you enjoy this episode of the Whoop Podcast, please leave a rating or review. Check us out on social at Whoop, at Will Ahmed, at Kristen_Holmes 2126. Have a question you want to see answered on the podcast? Email us, podcast@whoop.com. Call us, 508-443-4952. If you're thinking about joining Whoop, you can visit whoop.com. Sign up for a free 30-day trial. That's a pretty good deal. It's free. New members can use the code WILL, W-I-L-L, to get a $60 credit on Whoop accessories. That's a wrap, folks. Thank you all for listening. We'll catch you next week on the Whoop Podcast. As always, stay healthy and stay in